All right, cool. Great. So part 5 is reflection on learning. So the big things in this, you sort of look at the summative assessment, whatever that was, however you assessed, you're going to analyze that. And then you've got the grid that you did on, I believe it's part 1 or part 2, where you sort of place students on where you thought they were in that content area, whatever the objective was, and see if they moved at all. And Julie, you had some interesting thoughts. I looked briefly at yours. I might ask you to share some of those in a minute. And then the big one, which I'm going to go a little bit deeper in here tonight, is the case study student learning. It's where you upload the student learning samples, and then there are like numerous questions asked in numerous ways, getting at student learning. And some you might fill out like an entire box and put all of your thoughts in one box, and then see there's like 5 more boxes. That's cool. Like if you covered the stuff in the box up above, just say "see above," right? You don't have to recopy it or like paste it out, like. Because like sort of the flow of that, it's asking sort of like generally what was learned, what was the relationship, and then there's like deep questions on student work, where I could see like you could talk about the relationship and that could feed right into the student work. There's various ways to do it, and you don't have to fill out every box, but as long as the spirit of every question is answered somewhere in that document, just point me to it and I'll figure it out. And then there's some questions about like, how is this process of planning units different than what you normally do? And then there's like a teacher standard reflection that's pretty much like what was usually at the end of our modules, but we just stuck it at the end of this reflection here. I'm going to open, I'm in yours, Julie, but I'm going to open the template. That one. And then Julie, if you wouldn't mind, since you've done it, if you wouldn't mind sharing thoughts, were there like parts that were especially hard or confusing? Or just like, if you happen to have any tips or tricks since you've been through it here just recently.
So my tip would be definitely use Google Docs. If you guys are already doing that. I created a folder for each of my body of evidence, for each of my students.
Do you want me to show that? Is that okay if I show that?
Go for it. Yeah,
okay.
It's totally fine. And so, within what Dean shared, like there's my CR body of evidence, MD body of evidence, and then you can open up one of them and it went.
Cool. And so CR is just MD. Those are the initials of the case study students, right?
Yeah. Cool. Okay. And then within each one, I tried to be really consistent about the way I labeled it. Like here's their initial test assessment.
Okay.
I had journal entries and exit work, ticket work. If I were to go back and spend more time, I would probably put actually dates on them. Okay. Their final feedback, a classroom example, and then another just typical work example, because I was really purposeful in the assessment, which I'm sure all of you were, is not just the final assessment, like because it said that, in part 2. And so I just threw that in, and I was very consistent with the way I labeled it. So I just scanned it and threw it all in there together, and then I linked to it. I think I'll go back when I get a little bit more space from the Unit 5 and go back, and when I reflected, go ahead and open up my Unit 5. It's just because I refer to it, I think I'm going to go back and like share the link within the drive. So if you go down to where I reflected about my students, that's all the Bloom stuff. So here's where my kids are. Keep going down. So
a little bit of a lag. Not the best driver right here. Yeah. So there's the grid we were talking about. You might remember that from previous.
So I printed off the grid, which was good. From unit, I think it's Unit 2 is when we first, or part 2. I printed that off, so I was able to see where they changed. And then I noticed that maybe gaining kids are also my SPED kids and maybe my bilingual learners. And I wish I would have categorized them differently.
Yeah, because you made a point there about fair versus equitable, like the way you bucketed them.
I kind of had that aha moment, like 3 weeks ago. That, of course, they're still going to be in the beginning because they didn't even start out at grade 6, And so when I threw them in at first, I just put them against the grade 6 standards. And I wish I wouldn't have.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah. The way we label kids and the way we label schools and test score data, red,
exactly.
Blue,
and and when I reflected on their growth and some of their grades even, I put just as much emphasis on growth as their final output. I wasn't honoring at all about where I'd thrown them on the grid.
Yeah.
So here's where, like, I'm I think I'm going to go back, and when I talk about, scroll down a little bit, the student 1, student 2, student 3, and I'm going to throw in the actual work because I reflect back to it. I think I'm just
like
going to
hyperlink it so I could hit it.
Hyperlinks in there to the specific. And then I threw in the whole folder at the bottom.
Right. Is that right?
This is where you talk about see above. I was like, I swear to God, I just answered all these.
Yeah. So if you look, and like, this is the way you did it is fine. And she reached out to me over the weekend and she was like, what's the difference? So this is like each student's learning and growth over the course of the unit. So how do the kids move over the unit? I would be inclined here to talk about the student work that I'm seeing.
Right.
I think like the intent of this was just like generally, but I think it's fine to go into the student work here, go into the specifics. And then missed opportunities, like gaps in understanding. What did you notice? What do you wish you could have pushed with the student? Maybe you didn't. And then it goes into like the relationship part of that. And then there are specific work questions again. And if you've already addressed that yet, just like Julie did here, see above, see above, see above. That's easy for me to go up there. You sort of took like a holistic approach to those questions, and that's fine with me. And I see these hyperlink to the drives, to the folders that we saw before, right? So each kid's student work is in there.
Yeah, but that's to the whole folder. So what I think I'm going to go do is when I reference like, the final assessment, I'll just put the hyperlink in there for you because that makes more sense.
I mean, if you want to, I can probably figure it out, but it's up to you. Cool. And then was there anything else? I mean, this is sort of just about the process and then the standards. Where did you spend the most work in this document? Was it the student work section and the analysis of the learning?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's just getting it all organized. So I had scanned in all the student work. Our copiers are also scanners, and I sent it from my work email home. So, and I just like titled it BOE. So I had to go and be like, wait, whose BOE is this? Which one?
Yep.
And then throw it in the right one, like download it from wherever and then put it in the right folder, so. And then just a reflection, like really get into like, what am I really noticing in those students as a whole, like as a class, but also specifically in these particular students.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Does anybody have any other questions for Julie or me? I mean, while we're talking about it, I was going to show a few other parts, but did anybody have any specific questions? I want to see Marlon join. Hey, Marlon. Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, so I guess as far as the artifacts go and stuff, the evidence, I mean, can that be also incorporated in the film? I mean, as I'm walking around, I kind of film what they're writing down, what they're looking at, all of that stuff? Or
absolutely. And like, say you were doing this part, like say like Julie is like, talking about specific struggles or specific strengths, you could just put parentheses in there at the end of video with like the date, and if you could find the general time. So like, at like 2:45 in the video, I showed the student's work. Like that's where you can see the student. That's cool. I've never had anybody do that before, but I think that's cool. I think that's neat.
Okay.
And especially with art, like it's not like a document that I want to read every word, right? It's a visual, so it is a little bit different.
Yeah, and that way you kind of see what they're going through as far as the process goes. I even go up to the screen, I show what they're showing, what they're talking about, as I'm showing a visual.
Yep.
And then we're talking about that.
And even if you wanted to make a whole nother video that's just student work, I mean, you could just walk around and show the case study video, or like one video for a student, one video for another, because you can upload as many videos to Ed as you want. That's cool. And when I said I've never had anybody do that before, I'm actually lying. I had a theater teacher last year, and her whole unit was on kids internalizing the character. And so she had videos of the kids right when they got the script, like reading through the script the first time, and then like marking up the script to like put themselves in it. And then like the last dress rehearsal before the play. So that, I guess, yeah, that's cool. It's interesting what counts as student work. Yeah, definitely get creative with that if you see something cool. Yep, that's awesome. Cool. One thing I wanted to point out, and I got to remember where some of this stuff is. So like in your folders, I'm just going to open up Jeff's real quick. And there should be like a document in there that says like resources. I think my computer's freaking out that I'm on the video thing. I'm opening up all these folders. Yeah, unit plan guide. So each of your folders has a unit plan guide in it. And I want to show one specific resource that I made, but I'm also going to go in depth with it a little bit here. All of these links. So part one, if you were stuck there, these resources help. So if you click on that resource link, it links to like the different parts of that of the reflection and some ways to like help you out. One of them, so like this Google Drive tutorial is literally like how to like link things to Google Drive. And then the student work analysis. Was this what didn't work, Julie?
So that's broken within the unit, like
Within the
in
unit.
part 5.
Within like the actual template.
Right.
Cool.
Like I was like, why is this not hyperlinks? So
Yep.
good to know that that's there.
Yeah, so you can back into that a little bit. This is an example that I did with 2 poems from 6th graders that I taught back in the day. And I'm going to show you the poems here in just a second, sort of talk through what I was seeing. But one poem was called La Frontera, the other was called The Street. And La Frontera means the border in Spanish. And so I sort of like walk through in this sheet my thinking from the actual student work. And if you go down, you can actually link to the student work and look at it. And then you can see like how I sort of spelled out breaking down those 2 poems and which was better and which still had value and stuff like that. But I actually want to show you the 2 poems right now. Might as well just check and see if these links still work. Cool. So when you hit that link, you'll see I've got the standards. I'm sorry that's turned weird, but essentially it's the writing standard of, let's see, I can't read it on the side. But essentially, I looked at C and F, which I highlighted there, essentially, which are using a range of poetic techniques, onomatopoeia, simile, metaphor, all that stuff. And then using word choice. Julie's tilted. She's turning the whole computer. That's smart. But I just wanted to like ground that in the standards. You can see the poem here. A lot of it's in Spanish. Essentially, it's her crossing the wire with her family when she was a baby and what she remembers of that. So it's not really super fluent in either English or Spanish, which is definitely a problem when you teach writing. But the student was like an exemplary student. She worked really hard. The one thing about her was that she never shared anything about herself, which was really hard in a writing class. And so this marked the first time she really shared from within. And it was about her crossing the border when she was a baby, which is pretty beautiful. And I definitely, that's where like when I gave feedback to her, it came from that spot of, I really appreciate you pushing through like, all the things that could keep you from sharing this. And it's good for me because I know we have a great relationship that you would share this. This is a great jumping off point to further explore yourself, your feelings, et cetera, et cetera. That said, there are some like major issues in it. Specifically, she says fence like in the last few stanzas about like 20 times. And so specifically when we're thinking about like word choice, right? It's like, what's another word for fence that you can use? Half the poem's in Spanish. The fact that you use the English word fence a bunch of times and don't use like a Spanish synonym or another synonym, like that to me makes it seem like the Spanish wasn't especially like deliberate when you use Spanish. So then that gets into a conversation. Cool, you use a lot of Spanish, but like throughout, you lose me some places because I don't know Spanish that well, and some of the Spanish isn't accurate, which is fine. But how would it look like if you pulled back on the Spanish a little bit and really use it as like exclamation points, or really like stressing important parts, or maybe emotional parts, or maybe only the mom speaks in Spanish and all the other characters speak in, there's various ways you could do that. But I led with that, thank you for opening up. Thank you for pushing through. This is what I love to see. And the more you do this, the better writer you're going to be. That said, here are some things we can do moving forward. And I think it's important to sort of like think about that when you're analyzing the student work, especially when you're going to deliver it directly to students. So her shout out was very different from some of the other students. And I scored this on a rubric. Sorry, it's a turned again, but you can look at this yourself. I only gave her proficiency, I think, in maybe 3 of the 6, and I gave her an unsatisfactory in the figurative language, which was lacking. So if I handed that to a kid out of context, they might be like blown away and like crushed, and especially when I read about crossing the wire, right? So I think like couching that feedback is really important. But even though this wasn't academically where I wanted it to be, emotionally it definitely was. That's something to celebrate. I want to show the other poem though, because it's one of my favorite things from my teaching. So the first page is the same. It's the same standard, and then the poem second, and then you can see how I scored her. But a little context on this. This student, she was the 3rd sibling I taught, and so I had actually been in this house. And they grew up in a pretty like rough house in North Denver. But North Denver's gentrifying really fast. So they're pretty much at like 31st and Wyandotte. Like if you know North Denver by like where Little Man ice cream is, the big like ice cream silo, or like what else is over like 32nd and Tejon is where like Pasquini's Pizza is, and there's some like fancy restaurants. So she was like right around there. She's right across the street from a really fancy restaurant that used to be called Z Cuisine, but they shut down. They're going to reopen at some point. But she wrote this poem about 3 weeks before they got displaced. The landlord kicked them out, sold the building, got knocked down. Now it's condos. And she moved out of Denver, like to Thornton or Westminster, like where it's affordable but far from home. But I actually want to read this one. Yeah, we'll talk about her in a minute. She's an interesting character too. But here's her poem. My street, your street, the street where I grew up. Looking at where I played hide and go seek with Choyito. Choyito's a nickname for someone named Jesus. My dad yelling at us saying, Los quiero in la casa in 10 minutes, get in the house in 10 minutes. My sister Allison saying, I want pizza, I want pizza. Taxi passing by, neighbors saying, hola, ¿cómo están? As my dad calls them, los gringos. Going to the park as I pass Al's house, the sweet smell of donuts, the smell of spices. Coming back from school, waiting to pass El Semaforo, streetlight. No cars passing, jaywalking the street, as my brother Alberto calls it. Well, I sure will miss that neighborhood, Z Cuisine, my house, my street. She was a challenging student, didn't want to work. When you got her focused, she was a brilliant writer, brilliant thinker. I love the simplicity of this. I love the Spanish that she works in. Like, it's sort of the antithesis to the last poem we saw, where like there's very little Spanish, but it does kind of serve a purpose. Like keeps it going. It changes voice. That's really cool. There's not a lot of figurative language. I gave her credit for personification because I really felt like she brought the street to life. Like the street was like a character itself, and it might be a little bit of a stretch. I also don't love the ending. I think she could, like the well I didn't really love, and like I like how it ends at my street. I think she could have done more there. But again, like I think even with her, I think I led with this like, damn, Steph, this was great. This is awesome. See what happens when you put in the effort. And then she like gushed, but I'm like, no, but like really, like what if you put this effort in on all your work? Like what would that look like? And so that was like the crux of the conversation. And I said, you know, you crushed it on this, a few small like tweaks. And then her next piece was like longer, more in depth. Like that like got her going. And she's in high school now. I think she's like a sophomore or junior. And she's like one of the key people in like a poetry club in North High, which is really cool. But like you can see how those poems are different, and the feedback is like different as well. You really have to personalize that feedback, especially when you're giving it directly to students. You don't have to really do that a ton in the part 5, but when you're going to interact with students, give them feedback on something personal like this, it's important. Even on their math, you know, I mean, they've developed like a math identity or a science identity. Art is similar to this. And Julie, you did a writing unit as well, right? So I'm like, the feedback is, it's delicate when kids are writing about their lives. Cool. I scored her really strong. You can see it on the rubric. I think the middle one, that's the one where she didn't have a whole lot of figurative language, but I give her credit for personification. But you can sort of see my thoughts there as well. But that's just like, that's looking at student work. I know like none of you have taught poetry for this unit, but you know, you're looking at a product and you're sort of putting the product in the context of the person. You don't want to lower the standards or lower the expectations, but sort of like Julie said, you know, you got to place in some context. Where did the kid start? How has the kid grown? And then how are you going to like give that feedback in a humane way? We're not like giving a kid an A+ for C work. We're not doing that. You know, like they're holding their feet to the fire. We want to see them do expert work and master the standard, but bringing some humanity to that conversation, the way you give that feedback too.
Also, something I learned is have them grade themselves. That like not only does that CYA, but covers your ass, but it also kind of makes like where are they thinking that their strongest or weaknesses, right. And they're pretty honest. And that has saved me sometimes with parents being like, "Why did my kid get a C on this?" I'm like, "Well, they gave themselves an F, and I gave them a C+." So.
Yep. And if you notice the way I created this rubric, there are like boxes there. So it's kind of like a checklist and a rubric together. But I would give kids this rubric. And it's like, you're done? Okay, you're telling me you're done. You know I want you to revise. You know I want you to pay attention to up in the word choice and like doing all this stuff. Here's a rubric. Before you give it to me, where are you going to score? And check off what you have.
Where was this 3 weeks ago?
I'm sorry.
Hold down on me, dude.
Is Nate holding up a rubric?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me stop.
Love it.
Yes. Hold up. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that you let them grade themselves. Yes.
That's awesome.
All of them. And then there's no questions as far as, later on and stuff. The thing I did have problems with was, I let them grade themselves. There's one student that's just phenomenal in art, but she definitely was at this lower standard of like, oh, I love art, and she's really exceptional. But I think she needed some building up as far as like just building confidence and being like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Let's go with this. Let's keep going with that. And she actually ended up winning the middle school art contest here, which went to Casby in Colorado Springs, which was
Wow.
so awesome. But the crazy thing is I got some backlash from her mom. And her mom kind of, I had heard this from her brother. Her brother came in and was like, oh yeah, Mr. Nate is jealous of her work. And I was like, come on. Like, I had to deal with that in grad school of like a professor being jealous of my work. And I'll never do that to a student. I mean, we're in completely different tax brackets, as far as like,
you're jealous of their income.
Well, I'm just saying as far as like just the overall like tax bracket of like, hey, I'm an artist, you're in 7th grade. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Why would I be competitive on that level? I'm definitely here to just be a vehicle for you to create art and for me to push it further. But yeah, I mean, having her do the rubric, it definitely was right along my same standard. And, I felt like it was weird with the parent getting involved and saying that. I was just like, come on, that's the last thing I would ever do.
That's an interesting point, though. Yeah, like the CYA aspect of it. That's something I hadn't hadn't thought about. That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. So I'm just gonna stop there with that part 5 of the unit plan. I mean, it's long. We sort of looked at it. I looked at the piece that I thought is the hardest, and Julie thought the same thing. There's no prescriptive way to do that. You know how you look at work, and you know what you're looking for. Do it the way that's true to you, that you can make that template work for you. And if you don't want to fill out every box, refer me to where I can find that information. See above, see part 2, whatever it is. But if you have any questions, concerns, stuck in a part, shoot me an email. We can jump on Zoom. We can jump on a phone. We can figure it out. Cool. One last thing. Let's see. I'm going to share the screen again. And I wanted to go back to the slides, which I will do. Cool. I just want to look forward very quickly to remind you of the due dates and then talk about one thing I want to do with Athena between now and our next PLC. So all module work needs to be done by November 30th. I think everybody's done with everything except there are a couple people that still are working on the restorative module, and that's fine. You've got until the end of the month. It's pretty straightforward. You don't need to implement anything, so that's something you could do over Thanksgiving if you so chose. Athena, remember, I do want to see at least 3 videos from that unit plan. Cool. And like Nate brought up, if you want to show student work somewhere in that, or have a whole different video where you show student work, if that works, you can definitely do something like that too. I'm going to skip that next bullet in Athena and come back to it. Our final PLC, this is our penultimate PLC right now. So our final PLC is December 11th. I see that as just kind of celebratory. I think it'll only take, I don't think it'll take the full hour, but I do just kind of want to reflect how far have we come, celebrate how far we've come, and just kind of, revel in our last time together as students. But I think Julie, I've told, and this goes for anybody, your connection with me doesn't end when the program ends. Please reach out to me if you want a resource, or if you want an idea, or you need a thought partner. I would love to be that person. Or if you got a cool discussion or a cool community presentation that your kids are doing or something, invite me, and I can maybe bring some people from the university who can show up and give your kiddos the attention they deserve. So don't think that we're done. I'm not going to spend a lot of time grading your stuff because it's my least favorite part, but I will definitely help you out in any possible way I can moving forward. So please take me up on that. I mean that. I want to go back to the bottom part of Athena. So student work analysis, video plus peer responses. So I did something cool last year when I went to Reggio with the fall people, because they were wrapping up the unit plan around the time I went to Reggio, and they were, I wasn't here. So I wanted them to look at student work, and I was going to lead a PLC that way, but I was in Italy. There's no way I could actually do that. So I had them do it in Athena, and I actually really loved it. And I want to do it with you all, but I want to pair you off intentionally. So Lynn and Nate, you'd be in a group together. You'd show off the student work and just kind of see, what do you see in that student work? What would be some ideas you'd have for next steps with that student to push them even higher? And then Marlon and Peter are math guys. They both teach high school math. I'm going to stick them in a module. And my hope is that we've got a pretty brilliant ally who's our math ally. I'm hoping I can get him in there and maybe he can throw in some feedback of what he's seen in the student work as well. He definitely knows more than I do. And then Julie, I was going to put you and Jeff together. You're both kind of humanities, different grade levels, but you're definitely humanity. And you both kind of think similarly around, teaching. It's not just teaching a bunch of activities, compelling questions, letting kids chew on it and stuff, which is really cool. So that's what I'm thinking. But here's what it looked like. So I want to show Chris's. I'm not going to like show the whole video, but essentially what Chris did, so he recorded a video. He used QuickTime. You can do like a screen recording, and you can actually show the stuff in your computer if you want to do that. I can help you out doing that if you want, so you don't have to. He kind of went above and beyond with the presentation. But essentially, he's showing the student work and talking through what he's seeing. And then up here in the eye, like if you've ever uploaded any lesson plans, I think a couple of you might have like wanted to share something with me. You can actually link files. So he linked the student work up in the files so the other people in the conversation could see it. There will just be one partner in your group, and I'll be in there. I'll be looking too. This group, I think, had 4. They were all ELA teachers from around the state. Chris is from Denver. Melissa's from Castle Rock. And I think the other one's Sam. She's from Pueblo. So I guess there were 3. But it was cool. So as you see, like he went through a whole video. His was 8 minutes. It doesn't need to be that long. If it needs, I mean, you can make it as long as you want it to be. But then it's cool. Like he just talked, and then people went in and put in comments. He'd respond. Melissa put in some thoughts. Sam put in some thoughts. He would respond. And there was like a whole dialogue. But as you see, there's like a lot of back and forth between them. There doesn't need to be this much. But it was really cool and beautiful in that it was the last thing they did in the program. I wasn't involved with it at all. It was them connecting, looking at student work and sort of like riffing off each other. And it was really, really neat to see how far they had come as teachers and as like analyzers of student work, but even like being open enough to connect with their peers, right? Like that's kind of scary, especially around teaching. Like it's our job and it's a hard job and it's a hard one to like take public and feel great about everything that you're doing. But it was really cool for them to do that. And I would like to try that before our next PLC. So whenever you'd like, actually, I need to make groups. Starting tomorrow, I'll send you an email and I'll let you know where you can do that. There's no need to like jump on it right away, but I'm going to do it. But if you can just film a little video, make sure that you link your student work up here, and then just offer some feedback for the other person in your group. What do you see? What are you thinking? And just kind of go back and forth. There's no real expectation for how many comments or how deep you need to go. I'm not looking at the quality of the student work. Like I'm not, getting on you if the kids didn't do a good job. Like it's just like a cool way to share that. I had them share it for just one case study student. If you want to share for more, you certainly can. I had them just go deep with one. But if you want to share more than that, totally doable. Questions about that? Scanning the room. Cool. Awesome. I'll send out more details about that. Again, the intention here isn't to like break the bank and like, break your back and do a lot of work. But I didn't really give you any pre-work for this time, and there's not really any pre-work for next time. So this can be like the pre-post work for all of that. But I do kind of want to use this as our like whip around or our do now or icebreaker at the next PLC. How did that go? What did you find out? What was neat in this activity? Does that make sense? Cool. Awesome. That's all I've got. I'll stay on the line if you have any questions. Otherwise, keep working on the unit plan. Let me know if you're running into any problems. Look for an email from me about this Athena stuff. Otherwise, we'll see you December 11th, and that'll be it.
Cool.
All right. Thanks so much. You're free to go. I'll stay on the call if you have any questions or anything.
Thanks so much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Dane.
Yeah.
Personal question. Are you here for the holidays?
In and out. Why?
I have tickets for Ralph Wrecks the Internet on Monday nights.
This Monday?
Mm-hmm. This coming Monday.
There's a chance. I'm trying to organize. I don't know when we're going to Nebraska. I'm going to make a note of that, and then I'll let you know for sure. That's cool. Thank you. I saw the text. Was it this summer that you texted?
Yeah, I think I've emailed you a few random times. I'm like, oh, here's a family movie. Oh, here's a family movie.
We want to see it. We loved Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, and it's down south. It's at Regal Continental, so the one off of Monaco
Okay.
on Monday night. So I
Yeah.
will email you the info.
Okay, great.
Okay.
If we're around, we'll definitely do it. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.
Awesome.
Bye.
Yeah. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing well. I feel like sometimes an idiot. Sometimes in these video conferences, I have all these things to say.
Oh, no worries, man.
Something and like am embarrassed in front of everybody. So I have these freeze like